Her flight attendant slipped her a napkin that read, "Pretend you're sick. Get off this plane." She ignored it until the attendant returned, whispering, "Please, I'm begging you." 2 hours later, she understood why. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family channel. May the Almighty bless every woman with a heart full of courage, a spirit unshakable by life's storms, and a strength that uplifts every soul around her. May your days be filled with peace, your nights with rest, and your homes overflow with love. You are the backbone of families, the silent light in darkness, and the treasure of humanity. May every step you take be guided by blessings, every challenge transform into triumph, and may your love and care always be celebrated. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Let's start with love. The worst moments in life don't announce themselves with sirens or thunder. They arrive in the small details we almost miss. A forgotten phone left charging, a receipt in the wrong jacket pocket, a name mentioned once too often. For Natasha Peter, it was a photo that appeared on her laptop screen late one Tuesday night, when she was finishing a client presentation and procrastinating by scrolling through her phone backup files. There, mixed in with hundreds of mundane images, was a photo she didn't remember taking. Couldn't have taken, because she wasn't there. Jacob at a restaurant, his arm around a young black woman with long braids and a radiant smile, both of them laughing at something, the easy intimacy of people completely comfortable together. The timestamp showed a date several months back during his supposed Dallas conference. Natasha's coffee went cold in her hand as she stared at the image. Her mind raced through explanations, colleague, client, random photo sent by mistake, but something about Jacob's body language, the way his hand rested possessively on the woman's shoulder, the lean of his body toward hers, made her stomach drop. She opened his cloud photo stream, something she'd never done before because trust had been the foundation of their 8-year marriage. What she found made the room tilt. Dozens of photos, Jacob and this woman at concerts, at the beach, in bed together, his face peaceful in sleep while she presumably held the camera, shopping for baby furniture, her hand showing off a ring that made Natasha's blood run cold, her grandmother's sapphire ring supposedly stolen 6 months ago, the ring Natasha had mourned losing, had filed an insurance claim for, had grieved as a lost connection to family history. The woman was pregnant, very pregnant. Natasha spent the next 4 hours in that chair, clicking through an entire secret life. The woman's name was tagged in several photos, Brielle. The locations ranged from Atlanta to a Florida address Natasha didn't recognize. The timeline stretched back 18 months, nearly half their marriage's final years. By the time the sun rose, Natasha had found Brielle's Instagram through reverse image search, found her workplace, Westwood Architecture, Jacob's firm, found her mother's profile, Keisha Williams, a Delta flight attendant based in Atlanta, and found the post from 3 days ago. "Can't believe I'm getting so close. Baby girl arriving soon. Blessed beyond measure to start this family with my forever person. Forever person," while sleeping in Natasha's bed, while planning renovations to their home, while making love to her with what she'd believed was genuine intimacy. She sat in the dawn light of their Brookhaven home, surrounded by the debris of her shattered world, and made a decision. She wouldn't confront him yet. She would investigate first, build her case, understand the full scope of the betrayal before she acted. The following days passed in surreal duality. Natasha played the role of loving wife, while simultaneously conducting an investigation that would eventually destroy her marriage. She smiled over breakfast while mentally cataloging Jacob's lies. She kissed him goodbye while planning to hire investigators. By the end of that first week, she'd hired a private detective. Not the cheap kind, but the former Secret Service agent who charged $500 an hour and delivered results. She tracked Jacob's movements, his finances, his communications through legal channels that wouldn't compromise her position later. What she uncovered was sophisticated, calculated, and absolutely devastating. Jacob had been living 2 complete lives with surgical precision. Monday through Wednesday, he was Natasha's husband, sleeping in their bed, attending couples' dinners, planning their future. Thursday through Sunday, he stayed at a condo in Fort Lauderdale that was titled under Brielle's name, but paid for with money from their joint accounts, money from Natasha's inheritance from her father. The detective's report was comprehensive and damning. Jacob had told Brielle that his wife, Natasha, had died in childbirth 3 years ago. He'd shown Brielle fake death certificates, fake sympathy cards, constructed an entire tragic backstory. He'd introduced Brielle to his work colleagues as his girlfriend, kept Natasha carefully compartmentalized from his professional life. Different worlds that never touched, never overlapped, never risked exposure. The financial theft was extensive. Over recent months, Jacob had moved significant funds from their joint accounts into offshore holdings. He'd opened credit cards in both their names, maxed them out on Brielle's lifestyle, then paid minimums. He'd taken out a life insurance policy on Natasha with himself as beneficiary. That last detail made her hands shake when she read it. How far had he planned to go? Now, standing in the Atlanta airport with a last-minute ticket to Los Angeles, where Jacob was supposedly attending an architecture conference, Natasha felt cold calculation replacing shock. The detective had confirmed Jacob wasn't in LA at all. He was in Fort Lauderdale with Brielle for a prenatal appointment. She wasn't going to LA to surprise him with romance. She was going to Fort Lauderdale to watch him, to document, to build an unassailable case before she destroyed him. At the gate, a flight attendant named Keisha, the name tag confirmed it was Brielle's mother, was checking boarding passes. Natasha watched her carefully, this woman whose daughter was carrying her husband's child. Did Keisha know Jacob was married? Was she complicit in the deception? As Natasha boarded, she made a split-second decision. Instead of going to her seat, she waited near the galley until other passengers cleared, then approached Keisha directly. "I need to talk to you about Jacob Duffy," Natasha said quietly, "and your daughter Brielle." Keisha's face went through rapid transformations, confusion, recognition, fear. "How do you—" "I'm Natasha, Jacob's wife, his very alive wife who supposedly died in childbirth 3 years ago." She kept her voice level, professional. "I have documentation proving everything. I'm not here to hurt Brielle, she's a victim too, but I need information, and I need it now." 20 minutes later, they sat in an airport lounge, Keisha's shift covered by a colleague, both women's lives exploding in real time. "I found out recently," Keisha said, her voice raw. "I saw his real name on some legal documents at Brielle's apartment. I looked you up, found your social media, saw your wedding photos. I've been trying to figure out how to tell her without destroying her while she's pregnant." "Did you know he was married when they started dating?" Natasha asked. "No, God no. Brielle would never. She's a good girl. She fell for his story about being a grieving widower. She thinks she's healing him, giving him a second chance at family." Keisha's hands trembled around her coffee cup. "She's 24 years old, Natasha. She has no idea she's part of a con." "Neither did I," Natasha said. "For 8 years I had no idea." They talked for 3 hours, sharing information, building a timeline, recognizing they were both casualties of the same man's calculated deception. By the time they finished, Natasha had made several decisions. She wouldn't go to Florida. She would return home and act normal. She would let Jacob think he was safe while she built an absolutely comprehensive legal case. She would take everything from him, money, reputation, freedom if possible. And when she was ready, she would burn his entire empire to the ground. "What about Brielle?" Keisha asked. "When do we tell her?" "Not yet," Natasha said. "Not until I've secured my legal position. If we tell her now, she might warn him. She loves him. She'll want to believe his explanations. We need to be strategic." "That feels manipulative," Keisha said quietly, "keeping her in the dark." "It is manipulative," Natasha agreed. "But Jacob taught me something valuable. Sometimes you have to become what you're fighting against to survive." Flying back to Atlanta that evening, Natasha felt something fundamental shift inside her. The woman who'd boarded that flight this morning, trusting, naive, playing by rules that her opponent had abandoned, was gone. In her place was someone harder, colder, willing to do whatever was necessary. She'd always prided herself on being ethical, on taking the high road. But the high road had left her vulnerable to someone who operated without conscience. Jacob had destroyed her ability to trust. Now she would destroy everything he'd built on lies. And if that made her morally compromised, if that meant becoming calculating and ruthless, so be it. Some transformations aren't chosen. They're survival. Chapter 2. The Investigation. Natasha's house felt different when she returned that night. Not because anything had changed physically, but because she was seeing it through new eyes. The home they'd bought together, the furniture they'd chosen, the life they'd built, all of it was contaminated by lies. Every surface held memories that were now revealed as performances. Every shared moment suddenly suspect. She found Jacob's laptop in his locked office, the password exactly where she'd expected it, written on a sticky note hidden in his architecture reference books, because for all his elaborate deceptions about relationships, Jacob was remarkably careless about digital security. A man who could maintain 2 complete lives somehow couldn't remember to create a strong password. What she found in his files was worse than she'd imagined. He'd kept meticulous records, not out of honesty, but out of narcissism. There were folders labeled Brielle, Natasha, and horrifyingly, exit strategy. Inside were documents that revealed the true scope of his planning. This wasn't impulsive infidelity. This was calculated long-term deception with specific goals and timelines. The exit strategy folder contained draft divorce papers dated months back, long before Natasha had discovered anything. The grounds listed adultery on Natasha's part. With colleague Derek Richardson, Jacob had documented numerous suspicious meetings between Natasha and Derek, all of them legitimate work lunches and project collaborations, but photographed and described in ways that suggested intimacy. Timestamps, locations, fabricated emotional context. He'd written emails to his brother Tom and their friend Lisa over the past year, gradually poisoning their perception of Natasha. I'm worried about her emotional distance. She's been cold lately, almost checked out of our marriage. I think she might be developing feelings for someone at work. Each message carefully crafted to build a narrative where Jacob was the concerned husband dealing with a wife who'd fallen out of love, laying groundwork for the story he'd eventually tell. The financial documents were even more damning. Jacob had been systematically moving money for many months, starting small, a few thousand here and there, then escalating as his confidence grew. The offshore accounts, the Florida condo purchased under Brielle's name, a life insurance policy on Natasha taken out months ago for a substantial sum. That policy made Natasha's blood run cold. She pulled up the terms, her hands shaking as she read the fine print. Accidental death clause, double indemnity, beneficiary, Jacob Michael Duffy. Had he been planning to kill her? She forced herself to breathe, to think logically. Maybe it was just financial opportunism. Maybe he'd never seriously considered murder. But the fact that she had to wonder, that her husband had created conditions where his wife's death would be financially beneficial, was its own form of violence. Her life had become a liability in his equation. In the Brielle folder, she found something unexpected, genuine emotion. Love letters Jacob had written but never sent, vulnerable and raw in a way he'd never been with Natasha. Confessions about his childhood, his father's abuse, his mother's enabling, admissions of feeling like an imposter his entire life, playing roles he thought people wanted to see. With you, I get to be someone new, one letter read, someone without history or failure. You see me as the man I wish I was, and in your eyes, I almost believe I can become him. Natasha sat back, discomfort warring with rage. This wasn't the simple story she'd wanted. Evil husband, innocent wife. This was messy, nuanced. Jacob clearly loved Brielle in whatever broken way he was capable of love. He'd created this elaborate deception not just to escape Natasha, but to escape himself, to become someone different in someone else's eyes. It didn't excuse anything, but it humanized him in ways that made her revenge feel less clean, less righteous. Monsters were easier to destroy than damaged humans trying desperately to outrun their own failures. She called her cousin Trina at midnight, needing both practical advice and moral support. "I found everything," Natasha said without preamble. "Bank records, emails, proof of fraud, enough to destroy him legally. But Trina, there's a life insurance policy, a big one, if I die accidentally." The silence on the line was heavy with implications neither wanted to voice. "You need to leave that house tonight," Trina said finally. "Come stay with me. We don't know how far he's willing to go." "I can't," Natasha said. "If I leave, if he suspects I know, he'll start hiding evidence. I need more time." "You could be in danger." "I'm always going to be in danger from men who see women as obstacles to their happiness," Natasha cut her off. "I can't live my life running scared. I need to be smart, strategic. I need to beat him at his own game." Over the following weeks, Natasha became someone she didn't entirely recognize. She hired not just Trina to track finances, but a forensic data specialist to recover Jacob's deleted files. She retained Diane Rothman, the most aggressive divorce attorney in Atlanta, known for absolutely destroying unfaithful spouses. She opened her own offshore account and started moving money quietly, protecting her assets before Jacob could hide more. Fighting deception with deception. She also hired a second private investigator, not to follow Jacob, but to investigate her own life. She needed to know if Jacob had planted any evidence of infidelity, if there were any weaknesses in her defense, if he'd been more thorough in his framing of her than the documents suggested. The PI found cameras, hidden cameras in their bedroom, their living room, her car. Jacob had been surveilling her for months, presumably trying to catch evidence of the affair he'd fabricated. The cameras had captured nothing incriminating, because there was nothing to find, but their existence was chilling. Every private moment, every vulnerable instant had been recorded and archived. "He's been watching you constantly," the PI said, showing her the feeds. "This level of surveillance, it's obsessive, paranoid, or careful," Natasha thought. Jacob was protecting his investment, making sure his exit strategy remained viable, making sure his victim didn't realize she was a victim. She left the cameras in place, but became hyper-aware of them, performing her life for his watching eyes. Loving wife, content in her marriage, unsuspecting of anything wrong. The pretense was exhausting. Every moment became a calculated performance. Every gesture weighted with awareness that he might be watching, analyzing, looking for cracks in her facade. Diane Rothman's assessment was both encouraging and brutal. "We have enough to win big in divorce court," she said during their second meeting. "The fraud, the hidden assets, the surveillance, it's all excellent ammunition. But the life insurance policy is concerning. That suggests premeditation of something criminal. We should involve police." "Not yet," Natasha said. "If we bring in law enforcement now, it becomes public. Jacob will lawyer up, start destroying evidence. I want him to feel safe right up until the moment we strike." "You're playing a dangerous game," Diane warned. "The longer you wait, the more risk you take." "I know," Natasha said, "but I'm not interested in just winning the divorce. I want to destroy him completely, professionally, financially, socially. I want everyone who knows him to understand exactly what he is. That takes time and evidence and strategic timing." Diane studied her carefully. "You've changed. When you first came to me, you were traumatized, looking for protection. Now you're looking for annihilation. Are you sure this is who you want to become?" The question haunted Natasha as she left the office. Was she becoming too much like Jacob, calculating, manipulative, willing to surveil and plot and scheme? Was her justified anger transforming into something darker? Was there a difference between righteous vengeance and becoming the thing you despised? She pushed the doubt away. Jacob had started this war. She was simply finishing it. Someone had to pay for the devastation, and she'd be damned if it was her. But late at night, lying in bed beside her husband who believed she suspected nothing, Natasha sometimes wondered if you could fight a monster without becoming monstrous yourself. If rage, however justified, eventually poisoned everything it touched. If survival required sacrificing the person you used to be. Several weeks after discovering the affair, Natasha received a call from Keisha. "Brielle's baby shower is this Sunday. Jacob will be there. I thought you should know." "Are you going to tell her?" Natasha asked. "I don't know," Keisha admitted. "Every day I look at her, so happy and excited about this baby, and I can't bring myself to destroy that. Is that wrong? Am I protecting her or just being cowardly?" "You're being human," Natasha said. "Neither of us knows the right answer here. We're both just trying not to make things worse." Sunday arrived. Natasha tracked Jacob's location through the phone app he didn't know she'd installed on his device, watched him drive to the Fort Lauderdale address, saw him at the baby shower through photos Brielle posted on Instagram, cutting the cake, his hand on her pregnant belly, smiling that smile Natasha had once trusted completely. In one photo, he wore a t-shirt that said "Dad-to-be." In another, he kissed Brielle's temple while she beamed at the camera. The caption, "So grateful for this man who's given me everything I never knew I needed." Natasha stared at the images, feeling something harden inside her chest. Not love, that had died weeks ago. But something else. The final remnants of her innocence, maybe. The last piece of her that had believed in essential human goodness. She texted Keisha, "I'm ready to tell her. After the baby comes, when she's recovered enough to handle it. We'll do it together." Keisha's response came later. "Okay, I think that's right. Give her this happiness while it lasts." That night, Jacob came home full of stories about the work conference he'd supposedly attended. He talked about panel discussions and networking events and boring keynote speakers, the lies flowing so smoothly he barely seemed to notice he was lying. His facility with deception was almost impressive in its effortless fluency. Natasha listened, smiled, played her role, and felt herself disappearing further into the performance, becoming someone who could listen to lies without flinching, who could plan destruction while serving dinner, who could sleep beside someone she was systematically preparing to eviscerate. "I love you," Jacob said before turning off the light, the same ritual they'd maintained for 8 years. "I love you too," Natasha responded automatically, both of them lying. Both of them performing, both of them trapped in an elaborate dance of deception that only one of them knew was happening. In the darkness, Natasha lay awake and wondered which version of herself was real anymore. The trusting wife who'd existed weeks ago, or this calculating strategist who was learning to lie as fluently as her husband. Maybe both, maybe neither. Maybe you became whoever you needed to be to survive. Chapter 3. The Trap. Several weeks into her investigation, Natasha made a mistake that would change everything. She was in Jacob's office late one night, photographing the latest bank statement she'd found hidden in his filing cabinet when she heard the garage door open. Jacob wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow. He'd texted about extending his Dallas trip by a day. But there he was, footsteps echoing through the house, calling her name. Natasha had exactly 15 seconds to close the filing cabinet, turn off the light, and exit the office before he came upstairs. She made it, barely, slipping into their bathroom just as she heard him reach the second-floor landing. "Hey, baby," she called, turning on the shower to explain why she hadn't greeted him. "You're home early. Give me 2 minutes." Her hands were shaking as she actually got in the shower, letting the water wash away the fierce sweat and forcing her breathing to steady. That had been too close. One moment of carelessness, and she would have destroyed months of careful planning. When she emerged, Jacob was sitting on their bed, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. "You were in my office," he said quietly. "What?" "No, I've been in the shower. The filing cabinet wasn't closed all the way. And you always close things completely. You're meticulous about it." His voice was calm, but his eyes were calculating. "What were you looking for?" Natasha's mind raced through possible explanations. She could deny, but Jacob clearly wasn't buying it. She could partially confess, looking for tax documents, checking on household finances, or she could pivot to offense. She chose offense. "I was looking for our bank statements," she said, forcing anger into her voice, "because I've been noticing some irregularities in our accounts and you keep saying you'll look into it but never do." Irregularities? Jacob's expression didn't change. "Money disappearing, large amounts missing from our joint savings recently. I wanted to see if there were more transactions I didn't know about." She pulled on her robe, maintaining eye contact. "Were you going to tell me about the offshore account?" It was a gamble, showing enough of her hand to seem justified in snooping, but not so much that Jacob would realize she knew everything. Jacob's face went through micro-expressions too quick to fully read, finally settling on practiced confusion. "Offshore account? Natasha, what are you talking about?" "The account with significant funds that came from my father's inheritance money." She was ad-libbing now, throwing out partial truths to see how he'd react. "Did you think I wouldn't notice?" "That account is for tax purposes," Jacob said, his voice taking on that patient tone he used when explaining architecture to clients. "My accountant set it up to protect our assets. It's completely legal. I was planning to tell you about it." "When? After you'd moved all our money out of reach?" "You're being paranoid," Jacob said, standing up. "I understand you're stressed about your father's estate and wanting to make sure that money is protected, but accusing me of, what, stealing from you? That's insulting, Natasha." He was good, really good, turning her legitimate concerns into evidence of her instability. She could see the next moves already. He'd tell their friends she was becoming suspicious and irrational. He'd document this confrontation as proof she was emotionally unstable. He'd use her completely justified investigation as ammunition in his fabricated adultery case. "You're right," Natasha said, forcing her voice to soften. "I'm sorry. I've been stressed. Finding money missing, not understanding our finances, it made me scared. I shouldn't have gone through your office without asking." Jacob's expression shifted, sensing victory. "It's okay, baby. I get it. Losing your dad, inheriting all that money, it's made you anxious about finances. But you have to trust me. I'm protecting us." The gaslighting was so smooth, it almost felt like care. "I do trust you," Natasha lied. "I'm sorry I doubted you." That night, lying in bed after Jacob had fallen asleep, Natasha realized her timeline had just accelerated. He knew she was looking into finances. He'd be more careful now, more guarded. She couldn't wait any longer to act. The next morning, she called an emergency meeting with Diane and Trina. "He knows I'm investigating," Natasha said without preamble. "Not the full extent, but enough to be on alert. We need to file now." "We're not quite ready," Diane argued. "I wanted more time to subpoena his work emails, build the timeline of his affair with Brielle." "We don't have more time," Natasha interrupted. "If Jacob realizes how much I actually know, he'll start destroying evidence. He'll move money, delete files, prepare his own legal defense. We have to strike while he still thinks I only suspect the offshore account." Trina pulled up her laptop. "I can have a complete financial analysis ready by tomorrow. Every transaction, every hidden account, every dollar he's stolen. It won't be as comprehensive as I'd like, but it'll be enough." "What about the surveillance cameras?" Diane asked. "The ones he installed to spy on you. Those are illegal in Georgia without consent. We could have him arrested." "Not yet," Natasha said. "Criminal charges come later after I've secured the divorce and recovered my money. If we involve police now, it gets messy and public. I want this surgical." They spent hours planning the confrontation. Diane would have divorce papers ready by end of day. Trina would compile the financial evidence into an undeniable case. Natasha would prepare emotionally for the nuclear bomb she was about to detonate in Jacob's life. But as she drove home, Natasha felt something unexpected. Doubt. Was she doing this the right way? Should she give Jacob a chance to explain, to come clean, to show remorse? Was her pursuit of total destruction justified, or was she letting rage drive her into becoming someone she'd regret being? Her phone rang. Keisha. Brielle had the baby, Keisha said, her voice thick with emotion. A little girl, healthy and perfect. They named her Zara. How is she? Exhausted, happy, completely in love. Keisha paused. Jacob was there for the birth. He cried when Zara was born. Brielle posted photos of him holding his daughter, looking at her like she's the most precious thing in the world. Natasha pulled over, her hands suddenly unsteady on the wheel. I know this makes it harder, Keisha continued. Seeing him be a good father to Brielle's baby while he's been lying to you. But I thought you should know, he's not a complete monster. He's capable of love, even if it's selfish and destructive. That almost makes it worse, Natasha said quietly. If he were purely evil, this would be easier. But he's human, selfish, broken, capable of both love and cruelty. That makes him more dangerous, not less. Are you still planning to tell Brielle? After she's recovered from birth. Maybe in several weeks. She deserves to know the truth before Jacob gets deeper into her life. Natasha closed her eyes. And before I destroy him legally, she should hear it from us, not from court documents. That evening, Jacob came home with flowers, the first time he'd bought her flowers in months. For my beautiful wife, he said, kissing her cheek. I'm sorry about last night. I know finances stress you out. Let me be better about communicating. It was manipulation, clearly. Love bombing after making her doubt herself. But Natasha accepted the flowers, smiled, played her role for one more night. Because tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, she'd hand him divorce papers that would destroy the carefully constructed house of cards he'd built. Tomorrow, his double life would collapse. Tomorrow, both Brielle and Jacob would learn that actions have consequences. But tonight, she arranged the flowers in a vase and wondered if the woman who could smile while planning destruction was someone she'd recognize later. Probably not. War changes everyone. And she was about to go to war. Chapter 4. The exposure. The confrontation didn't happen the way Natasha had planned. Nothing ever does when you're trying to control chaos. She'd envisioned Friday evening. Jacob would come home from work. She'd sit him down calmly, present the divorce papers and evidence, watch his carefully constructed facade crumble. Clean, controlled, devastatingly final. Instead, on Thursday afternoon, her phone rang with an unknown number. Is this Natasha Duffy? A woman's voice asked, professional but strained. Natasha Peter. I kept my maiden name. This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the Atlanta Police Department. I need to ask you some questions about your husband, Jacob Duffy. The world tilted sideways. What happened? Is he hurt? No, ma'am. But we've received some concerning information and need to verify a few details. Can you come to the station today? Hours later, Natasha sat in an interrogation room that smelled like burned coffee and institutional cleaner, facing Detective Martinez and her partner, a heavy-set man named Detective Torres. We received an anonymous tip yesterday, Martinez said, sliding a folder across the table. Someone sent us documentation suggesting your husband has been engaged in financial fraud and identity theft. They also included evidence of illegal surveillance equipment installed in your home without your consent. Natasha's mind raced. Who had reported Jacob? Not Keisha, they'd agreed to wait. Not her lawyer. Diane would never risk compromising the divorce case by involving police prematurely. May I see the documentation? Martinez opened the folder. Inside were copies, not originals, of the same offshore account statements Natasha had photographed, the same hidden camera evidence her PI had documented, the same emails where Jacob poisoned their social circle against her. Did you send these? Torres asked. No, Natasha said honestly, but I recently discovered my husband has been having an affair and stealing from our joint accounts. I was planning to file for divorce. Planning to file? Martinez's eyes narrowed. But you hadn't yet. I wanted to ensure I had comprehensive evidence first. I hired a forensic accountant and a private investigator. They're still compiling the full scope of his fraud. The detectives exchanged glances. Torres leaned forward. "Mrs. Peter, are you aware your husband took out a substantial life insurance policy on you?" "Yes." "Did you consent to this policy?" "No. I only discovered it recently during my investigation." "And you didn't report it to police?" Martinez's tone was skeptical now. "A husband secretly insuring his wife's life for a substantial sum, that didn't concern you enough to involve authorities." Natasha realized with cold clarity that the detectives suspected her, not Jacob, her. "I was focused on protecting my financial assets during divorce proceedings," she said carefully. "I plan to address the insurance policy through my attorney." "Or maybe," Torres suggested, his voice deceptively casual, "you were planning something else. Maybe you discovered your husband's affair, got angry, decided to make him disappear and claim that insurance money yourself." The accusation was so absurd, it took Natasha a moment to process it. "You think I was planning to kill Jacob?" "We're trying to understand why you'd discover evidence of fraud, surveillance, and a suspicious life insurance policy, yet not report any of it to police," Martinez said, "unless you had your own plans that you didn't want authorities interfering with." "I was protecting myself legally for a divorce," Natasha said, forcing her voice to stay level. "Not planning a murder. That's insane." "Is it?" Torres pulled out another document. "Because according to these records, you recently opened your own offshore account. You hired not one but two private investigators. You've been systematically documenting your husband's every move. That level of surveillance, it's obsessive, concerning." Natasha's lawyer instincts kicked in. She needed to stop talking immediately. "I'd like to call my attorney before answering any more questions." The detectives let her make the call. Diane arrived within 30 minutes, furious. "You can't question my client without her attorney present," Diane snapped at the detectives. "And you're way out of line suggesting she's done anything criminal when she's clearly the victim of her husband's fraud." "We're just following up on the anonymous tip," Martinez said, "which, by the way, included some interesting suggestions that Mrs. Peter was planning to harm her husband." "That's absurd," Diane said. "Show me this supposed evidence." What they showed made Natasha's blood run cold. Printed emails from an account with her name, sent to a disposable address containing detailed plans for how to make it look like an accident. Researching untraceable poisons, discussing life insurance procedures for accidental death claims. "I didn't write these," Natasha said immediately. "Someone created a fake email account with my name and fabricated this." "The IP address traces back to your home internet connection," Torres said. "My husband had hidden cameras in our house. He clearly has the technical capability to frame me. This is exactly the kind of thing he would do. Get caught in his affair and fraud, then try to turn it around by making me look like the criminal." Martinez didn't look convinced. "Or you discovered his affair, got vengeful, and started planning murder. Then he found out and reported you anonymously to protect himself." They questioned Natasha for hours, only releasing her after Diane threatened to file complaints for harassment. But as she left the station, Natasha understood with sinking certainty that Jacob had outplayed her. Somehow, he'd discovered the full extent of her investigation, and rather than face the consequences of his fraud and affair, he decided to burn everything down, including her reputation, by framing her for attempted murder. Driving home with Diane, Natasha's hands shook on the wheel. "He's smarter than I gave him credit for," she said. "I thought I was 3 steps ahead, but he knew what I was doing the whole time." "We need to file the divorce papers immediately," Diane said. "Get ahead of this narrative. If he's claiming you were planning to kill him, we need to establish on record that you're the victim here, not the perpetrator." "It'll look suspicious, filing right after being questioned by police." "Everything looks suspicious now," Diane said grimly. "Jacob's made sure of that. The question is, how far is he willing to go? Is this just defensive maneuvering, or is he planning something worse?" That night, Natasha came home to find Jacob waiting in the living room, his expression unreadable. "Police called me today," he said. "They wanted to know if I felt safe in my own home. if I was concerned about my wife's mental state. Apparently someone sent them evidence suggesting you were planning to hurt me. I know, Natasha said, dropping her bag by the door. I spent hours being interrogated because someone created fake emails and framed me for attempted murder. Any idea who would do something like that, Jacob? His expression didn't change. You tell me. You're the one who's been sneaking through my office, hiring private investigators, moving money into secret accounts. Maybe you did plan something and now you're trying to cover your tracks. I was protecting myself from your fraud, Natasha shot back. From the money you stole from my inheritance. From the fake adultery case you were building against me. From the hidden cameras you installed to spy on me. Jacob stood up slowly. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't, Natasha said, her voice sharp. Don't pretend. I know about Brielle. I know about your daughter Zara, who was just born. I know about the Florida condo and the offshore accounts and every single lie you've told for the past 18 months. For a long moment, Jacob just stared at her. Then something in his face shifted, the mask finally dropping. How long have you known? Long enough, Natasha said. Long enough to document everything, to build a legal case that will destroy you. I was trying to be strategic, to wait for the right moment. But you forced my hand by going to the police with that fabricated attempted murder story. It's not fabricated, Jacob said. I really did receive those emails from an account with your name. I really am concerned you might hurt me out of revenge. Your behavior has been erratic, obsessive. You've been following me, spying on me. Because you've been committing fraud. Natasha's voice rose despite her best efforts to stay calm. You stole from me, lied to me, tried to frame me for adultery. You installed hidden cameras in our bedroom. You took out a massive life insurance policy without my knowledge. And when I started uncovering the truth, you tried to flip it around and make me look like the criminal. I was protecting my interests, Jacob said flatly. You were becoming dangerous. I had to act first. The admission stunned her. He wasn't even pretending anymore, just openly acknowledging he'd preemptively attacked her legally because she was a threat. So what now? Natasha asked. We both destroy each other. Drag this through courts and police investigations until neither of us has anything left. Or, Jacob said, we could settle this like adults. You drop the fraud allegations, I drop the attempted murder concerns. We file a simple no-fault divorce, split our assets reasonably, and move on with our lives. Split our assets reasonably? Natasha laughed bitterly. You've already stolen a significant portion of my inheritance. Why would I agree to give you more? Because otherwise this gets ugly, Jacob said. Really ugly. Those fake emails. They're convincing enough that police will investigate. Even if you're eventually cleared, your reputation is destroyed. Your business suffers. Your friends question if maybe you did plan something. Is that worth whatever revenge you're seeking? Natasha stared at the man she'd married 8 years ago, barely recognizing him. Or maybe finally recognizing him for the first time. You're threatening me, she said quietly. I'm being realistic, Jacob corrected. You can fight me and lose everything in the process. Or you can take the settlement, rebuild your life, and accept that sometimes there are no winners. It was a good offer, strategically. He'd give back some of the stolen money, they'd divorce quickly without a protracted legal battle, and Natasha would avoid potential criminal charges based on fabricated evidence. But accepting it meant Jacob faced no real consequences for fraud, for his affair, for months of systematic deception. It meant Brielle never learned the truth. It meant he got away with everything. I need time to think, Natasha said. You have 48 hours, Jacob said. After that, I'm filing my own divorce papers claiming you were abusive and threatened my life. I'll show the police those emails, the evidence of you stalking me, everything. And we both know how the law treats women who go after their husbands. Even when they're justified, they get blamed. He grabbed his overnight bag, clearly he'd packed before this conversation, and headed for the door. I'll be staying at a hotel. Let me know what you decide. And Natasha, I really did love you once. This didn't have to end this way. After he left, Natasha stood in the empty house, feeling the walls close in. she'd wanted justice. Instead, she'd gotten a hostage negotiation where both sides were armed. And the worst part, the truly devastating part, was that Jacob might be right. Sometimes there are no winners. Sometimes survival means accepting an unjust peace. The question was, could she live with that? Chapter 5. The Choice. Natasha didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table surrounded by evidence folders, legal documents, and the impossible choice Jacob had forced on her. Accept an unjust peace or wage a war that might destroy them both. Early in the morning, her phone rang. Brielle's mother, Keisha. "I heard what happened," Keisha said without preamble. "Jacob called me, asked me to convince you to take his settlement offer, said you'd gone crazy, that you were making accusations about affairs and fraud. He painted a picture of you as this unstable, obsessive woman who couldn't accept your marriage ending." "That's what he's telling everyone," Natasha said, too exhausted to feel anger. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know you well enough to have an opinion." Keisha paused. "Then I called you. Because I need to know. Are you going to tell Brielle the truth?" Natasha looked at the evidence folders. Photos of Jacob and Brielle together, bank statements showing stolen money, the whole ugly truth that would destroy a new mother's world. "If I take Jacob's settlement, part of the deal is silence," Natasha admitted. "He made that clear. No telling Brielle, no exposing the affair publicly, no destroying his reputation. A clean break where both of us walk away." "So Brielle never learns she was part of a con." Keisha's voice was sharp. "She raises his daughter thinking he's a good man who left his previous marriage for legitimate reasons? That's what you're considering?" "I'm considering survival," Natasha shot back. "I'm considering that if I fight Jacob, I might lose everything. My money, my reputation, possibly my freedom if those fake emails are convincing enough. I'm considering that maybe justice isn't worth bankruptcy and criminal charges." "That's not the woman I met at the airport," Keisha said. "The woman who was ready to burn his empire down." "That woman was naive about how dirty Jacob was willing to fight," Natasha said. "Now I'm being realistic. Sometimes the moral high ground is a luxury you can't afford." She hung up feeling sick. Everything she'd told Keisha was rational, strategic, self-protective. It was also cowardly. By morning, she'd made her decision, but not the one Jacob expected. She called Diane early. "I'm not taking the settlement. File the divorce papers, all of them. Fraud, surveillance, everything." "Natasha, you heard the police yesterday. Those fake emails will be exposed as fake through digital forensics," Natasha interrupted. "I'm not letting Jacob bully me into silence because he's good at manipulation. We fight, and if I lose, at least I lose fighting." "You could face serious consequences," Diane said bluntly. "If a jury believes those emails are real." "Then I'll deal with that," Natasha said. "But I won't spend the rest of my life knowing I let him win because I was scared." The divorce papers were filed that afternoon. By evening, the story had spread through their social circle like poison. Jacob's version dominated. Jilted wife, false accusations, concerning obsessive behavior. Natasha received texts from friends asking if she was okay, the kind of concerned messages that really meant, "Are you having a breakdown?" Lisa, who'd been Natasha's friend for 6 years, called that evening. "I just heard about the divorce. Jacob seemed so worried about you. He said you've been making wild accusations about affairs that didn't happen, that you've been following him, that the stress of your father's death made you paranoid." "It's not paranoia if it's real," Natasha said. "Jacob has been having an affair for 18 months. He has a newborn daughter with another woman." "Natasha," Lisa's voice was gentle, pitying. "I love you, but that sounds... Jacob showed me some of the evidence he's been collecting. The private investigators you hired, the offshore account you opened. It looks like you've been the one acting suspicious." "Lisa, I swear to you." "I think you need help," Lisa interrupted. "Professional help. The stress, the grief, it's clearly affecting your judgment. Maybe take some time, get some therapy, and work through whatever's causing these delusions." "They're not delusions," Natasha said. But Lisa had already hung up. Over the next week, more friends peeled away. They didn't explicitly choose Jacob. They just stopped responding to Natasha's messages, declined her invitations, created distance. Only a few remained loyal, and even they seemed uncertain, worried. Her parents called from Michigan, concerned about what they'd been hearing. Even they weren't sure what to believe. "Sweetheart, we love you," her mother said carefully. "But some of what you're claiming about Jacob, it's very serious. Are you absolutely certain you're not misinterpreting things?" "I have bank statements, Mom, evidence of fraud, photos of him with another woman and their baby." "Jacob's lawyer says you fabricated those documents," her father said, "that you're trying to frame him because you're angry about the divorce." "You believe his lawyer over your own daughter?" Natasha felt something break inside her chest. "We don't know what to believe," her mother admitted. "You're saying one thing, he's saying another, and honey, you do sound a bit frantic. Maybe you should take a step back, calm down." Natasha ended the call, unable to bear another minute of people she loved, doubting her sanity. This was Jacob's genius, she realized. He wasn't just defending himself, he was dismantling her credibility so thoroughly that even her own parents questioned her truth. Days after filing for divorce, Natasha received a notice. Jacob's attorney had filed a motion for a psychological evaluation, claiming Natasha exhibited signs of delusional disorder and was making false accusations stemming from an inability to accept the marriage's end. "This is standard intimidation tactics," Diane assured her. "They're trying to make you look unstable to strengthen their case. But it might actually work in our favor. The court-ordered psychologist will confirm you're rational, and then Jacob's credibility takes a hit." The evaluation was scheduled for the following week. Hours of questions designed to assess her mental state, her grasp on reality, her propensity toward vindictiveness or delusion. The psychologist, Dr. Susan Morris, was a stern woman in her 60s who took copious notes and showed no emotion as Natasha explained her situation. "You've hired 2 private investigators to follow your husband," Dr. Morris noted. "You've documented his movements, his communications, his financial transactions. To an outside observer, this could appear obsessive. To an outside observer who doesn't know he's been systematically stealing from me and conducting an affair for months," Natasha countered. "You claim to have evidence of this affair. Photos, you said." "Yes, him with another woman. His daughter who was just born." "And you obtained these photos how?" "Through his cloud photo stream, and through the private investigators." Dr. Morris made notes. "So you accessed his private digital accounts without permission, and you paid people to surveil him. Legally, both of those actions are problematic." "He installed hidden cameras in our home without my consent," Natasha said. "If we're discussing problematic behavior." "I'm not here to judge legality," Dr. Morris interrupted. "I'm assessing your mental state. And what I'm hearing is a woman who, rather than leaving a marriage she believed was troubled, instead engaged in extensive covert surveillance and investigation. That suggests difficulty with direct confrontation, possibly paranoid tendencies. It suggests I'm smart enough to build a case before confronting a man who's proven himself capable of elaborate deception," Natasha shot back. The evaluation concluded with Dr. Morris promising a full report within weeks. Natasha left feeling like she'd somehow been put on trial for being too competent at uncovering the truth. That night, emotionally drained, she made a decision that would haunt her later. She called Brielle. "Hello?" Brielle's voice was soft, slightly sleepy, probably up with a newborn. "Is this Brielle Williams?" Natasha asked. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Natasha Peter. I'm Jacob Duffy's wife." Silence. Then, "Jacob's wife died years ago." "No," Natasha said quietly. "She didn't. I'm very much alive, and I need you to know that everything Jacob has told you is a lie." "I don't know who you are," Brielle's voice turned sharp with fear, "but you need to stop calling me. Jacob warned me someone might try to harass me, some obsessed ex-girlfriend who won't accept it's over." "I'm not an ex-girlfriend," Natasha interrupted. "I'm his current wife. We've been married 8 years. We're in the middle of a divorce right now, and recently You gave birth to his daughter while he was still legally married to me." "You're lying," Brielle said, but her voice wavered. "Check public records. Marriage license for Jacob Duffy and Natasha Peter, years ago. Our divorce was just filed recently. Or better yet, ask your mother. She already knows the truth." Natasha hung up before Brielle could respond. It was cruel, she knew. Ambushing a new mother with life-destroying information, breaking her world open via phone call. But Natasha had run out of capacity for protecting everyone else's feelings while her own life burned down. Minutes later, Keisha called. "What did you do?" Keisha's voice was shaking with fury. "Brielle is hysterical. She's having a panic attack. She just gave birth recently. Her hormones are intense. And you called her with this bombshell?" "She deserved to know," Natasha said flatly. "She deserved to know gently, carefully, with support in place. Not through an ambush phone call that's made her question everything about her daughter's father while she's still recovering from childbirth." Keisha's voice broke. "I've been trying to figure out the right way to tell her. You just destroyed that." "I'm sorry," Natasha said, and meant it. I'm not in a good place right now. Jacob's convinced everyone I'm crazy. My own parents doubt me. I'm losing friends, losing my reputation, and I needed someone to believe me. I needed Brielle to know I'm not the villain Jacob's made me out to be." "So you traumatized my daughter to feel better about yourself?" Keisha asked coldly. "That's not justice, Natasha. That's just cruelty." She hung up. Natasha sat in the dark, realizing she'd just alienated one of her few allies, had just hurt an innocent woman who was also Jacob's victim, had just acted out of pain and anger rather than strategy or compassion. She was becoming what she'd feared, someone willing to cause collateral damage in pursuit of victory. The moral high ground was getting harder to see from where she stood. Days later, Dr. Morris's evaluation came back. Subject shows signs of high-functioning anxiety and hypervigilance, potentially exacerbated by grief over father's death and stress of divorce proceedings. While she does not meet criteria for delusional disorder, her behavior patterns suggest difficulty distinguishing between rational concern and excessive surveillance. Recommend continued observation. Not a damning report, but not exonerating either. Just enough ambiguity for Jacob's lawyer to use. The divorce trial was scheduled for months away, months of character assassination, legal maneuvering, and watching Jacob rebuild his reputation while destroying hers. Natasha had wanted justice. Instead, she'd gotten war. And she was starting to realize, in war, nobody wins. Some people just lose less. Chapter 6. The Cost. The months leading up to trial were brutal in ways Natasha hadn't anticipated. Not the obvious brutality of legal battles, she'd expected that, but the subtle erosion of self, the daily choice between being strategic and being human, the transformation into someone she'd once have found unrecognizable. Her business suffered first. Clients started pulling contracts, uncomfortable with the drama surrounding her divorce. Word had spread that she was involved in police investigations for potential fraud and harassment. Even though no charges were filed, the whisper network of Atlanta's business community had already judged her. "I'm sorry, Natasha," her biggest client said during an uncomfortable phone call, "but our board is concerned about optics. The allegations your husband has made, even if they're unfounded, create risk we're not willing to take right now." She lost significant revenue over weeks. Then came the deposition, days of hostile questioning from Jacob's attorney, a shark named Robert Kleinfeld, who specialized in making victims look like perpetrators. "Mrs. Peter, you've admitted to accessing your husband's private files without permission," Kleinfeld said, his tone suggesting this was evidence of deep moral failing. "You hired investigators to follow him. You opened offshore accounts to hide money. These are not the actions of an innocent spouse. They're the actions of someone protecting herself from fraud," Natasha countered. "Or the actions of someone planning something criminal," Kleinfeld suggested. "You discovered your husband had moved money offshore. Rather than confront him or report to authorities, you moved money yourself. Why?" "Because I didn't want him to steal everything before I could file for divorce." Or because you were planning to disappear with marital assets, Kleinfeld said smoothly. Your husband claims you threatened him multiple times, said you'd destroy him. That's a direct quote from an email you sent to your cousin Trina. Natasha's stomach sank. They had her emails with Trina, where she'd vented frustration, used violent metaphors, expressed her anger in the private language of family communication. I said I'd destroy him legally, Natasha clarified. Through the divorce process, not literally. But you can understand how threatening that sounds, Kleinfeld pressed. Combined with the suspicious life insurance policy, the surveillance, the offshore accounts, it paints a picture of a woman planning something extreme. Days of this. Days of her words, twisted, her actions reframed, her justified anger presented as evidence of instability. By the end, she felt hollowed out. They're making you look dangerous, Diane admitted after the deposition concluded. Kleinfeld is skilled. He's taking every defensive action you took and making it look offensive. So, what do? We focus on Jacob's fraud, the stolen money, the affair, the fake documents he created to frame you for adultery. We make him look worse than you. Diane paused. But Natasha, I need to be honest. This is going to be a fight, not a clean win. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that the judge splits the difference, sees you both as problematic, and renders a judgment that satisfies no one. That night, emotionally drained, she got a call from Brielle. I'm sorry I hung up on you, Brielle said without preamble. My mother explained everything, showed me proof, and I need to apologize. I thought you were some stalker ex. I had no idea you were his actual wife. It's not your fault, Natasha said, surprised by Brielle's call. You were lied to as much as I was. I still can't believe it, Brielle said, her voice thick with emotion. We have a newborn daughter together. He was at the birth. He held her and cried and told me how much he loved us. And the whole time he was married to you. How is that even possible? He's very good at compartmentalizing, Natasha said dryly. I've cut him off completely, Brielle said. Told him he's not welcome in Zara's life, that I don't want his money or his support or anything from him. My lawyer is drawing up papers to terminate his parental rights. You can do that? If he agrees, which I think he will. He seems relieved, honestly, like fatherhood was just another role he was playing, and he's grateful to be released from the performance. They talked for a long time, comparing notes, sharing their different versions of the same lies. By the end, they'd formed an unlikely alliance, two women destroyed by the same man, trying to rebuild from the ruins. The trial is in several weeks, Natasha told her. Would you be willing to testify, provide evidence of the affair, the money he spent on you, the lies he told? Brielle was quiet for a long moment. If I testify, it becomes public record. Everyone will know I was the mistress, even though I didn't know he was married. It'll follow me forever. I understand if you can't, Natasha said. You don't owe me anything. But I owe my daughter the truth, Brielle said. When she's old enough to ask about her father, I want to tell her I did the right thing, that I didn't protect a liar just because it was easier. Thank you, Natasha said, feeling the first glimmer of hope in weeks. But that hope was short-lived. Weeks before trial, Diane called with devastating news. Jacob's offering a settlement. 50-50 split of remaining assets, no-fault divorce. Both sides agree to never publicly discuss the details. He'll return a portion of the money he took from your inheritance. A portion, Natasha said. He stole a substantial amount. Why would I accept a fraction? Because the forensic analysis came back, Diane said carefully. And it's complicated. Some of the money was from your inheritance, yes, but some was from marital assets that he has legitimate claim to. The offshore accounts contain commingled funds. Untangling it would take years of litigation and cost more than you'd recover. So he gets away with it, Natasha said bitterly. He gets away with some of it, Diane corrected. But Natasha, if we go to trial, there's a real chance you walk away with less. The judge might see you both as equally problematic. Kleinfeld has built a strong case that you were also acting suspiciously. We could end up with a judgment that favors no one. What about criminal charges? Natasha asked. The fraud, the surveillance cameras. Prosecutors declined to pursue it, said the evidence is murky, both sides have legitimate grievances, and it would be difficult to prosecute successfully. Diane sighed. I'm sorry, I know this isn't the justice you wanted. Natasha spent days considering the offer, days of weighing justice against practicality, pride against survival, the moral high ground against the practical reality that sometimes evil wins. In the end, she took the settlement, not because it was fair, it wasn't, but because continuing to fight meant risking everything for a chance at partial vindication, and she'd already lost too much: her reputation, her friends, her business clients, her faith in justice. The settlement was finalized on a grey morning that matched her mood. Jacob didn't attend the signing, neither did Natasha. Their lawyers handled everything, reducing 8 years of marriage to signatures on legal documents. She got the house. He got the condo in Florida that he'd bought for Brielle anyway. They split the remaining cash assets. The offshore money was divided after legal fees consumed a significant portion. Her inheritance money, what was left of it, came back to her, minus what he'd already spent on his double life. In total, she recovered a reasonable portion of what he'd stolen. The rest was gone, absorbed into legal fees and expenditures that couldn't be recovered. Jacob faced no criminal charges, no professional consequences beyond losing his job. He'd already found new work at a smaller firm that hadn't heard about the scandal. His reputation was damaged but not destroyed. He'd be fine, and Natasha would be fine too, materially. She had enough money to rebuild, to start over, to survive. But she wasn't fine in the ways that mattered. Months after the divorce was finalized, Natasha sat in her therapist's office trying to explain the hollowness she felt. I won, she told Dr. Raymond, at least partially. I got some of my money back, kept the house, didn't face criminal charges for things I didn't do. By any objective measure, I should be grateful. But I just feel empty. Because you compromised, Dr. Raymond suggested. You took a settlement that felt unjust because fighting further would have cost more than winning. I became someone I don't recognize, Natasha said. I hurt Brielle by calling her right after she gave birth. I alienated my parents. I lost friends. I turned into this calculating, suspicious person who couldn't trust anyone. Is that who I am now? Is that who you want to be? Dr. Raymond asked. That was the question Natasha couldn't answer. She'd survived Jacob's betrayal. She'd fought his attempts to frame her. She'd protected her assets and her freedom. But somewhere in that fight, she'd lost parts of herself she wasn't sure how to get back. The ability to trust, the belief in justice, the woman who'd once thought the world operated on fairness and truth. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder, more cynical, better equipped for survival, but worse at living. Several months after the divorce finalized, something unexpected happened that would change everything once again. Chapter 7. The Complication. Natasha had rebuilt her life into something manageable. Not happy exactly, but stable. She'd taken on new clients who didn't know about the divorce scandal. She'd reconnected with the few friends who'd remained loyal. She'd started dating someone, Ryan, a divorced father who understood baggage and didn't judge hers. Then one morning, she woke up nauseous. It persisted for days. The exhaustion, the queasiness, the emotional volatility she'd attributed to post-divorce stress. Finally, on a hunch she didn't want to acknowledge, she bought a pregnancy test. Positive. She took 3 more, certain each one was wrong. All positive. The doctor confirmed it the next day. Pregnant. Early stages, but definitely pregnant. Based on your last period, conception would have been... Dr. Susan Morris checked her charts. Around the time you mentioned things were ending with your ex-husband. Natasha's mind raced backward. There had been that night, weeks before she'd discovered the affair. One of those obligatory married couple encounters that had become more routine than passion. She'd been so focused on the investigation afterward, on the divorce chaos, on surviving Jacob's attempts to frame her, that she hadn't even noticed her missed period. What are my options? She asked. Dr. Morris walked her through them carefully, clinically. Natasha had choices, but she needed to decide soon. She left the doctor's office and drove aimlessly for hours, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. She could terminate. It would be painful, emotionally and physically, but it would be closure. She could move forward without this permanent connection to Jacob, this biological tie she could never fully sever. But she'd always wanted to be a mother, and she was 34 years old. This might be her best chance. The pregnancy was healthy, viable. Just because the father was terrible didn't mean the child would be. By the time she got home, she'd made her decision. She'd keep the baby. But she wouldn't tell Jacob. The divorce was finalized. They had no contact requirements, no reason to speak. If she kept the pregnancy private, Jacob would never need to know. She could raise this child alone, tell people she'd used a sperm donor post-divorce, create a narrative that didn't include him. Over the following months, Natasha built her new reality carefully. She told friends and family she'd decided on single motherhood via sperm donor. A story that was met with support and enthusiasm from people grateful to see her moving forward after the ugly divorce. Her business gradually recovered as the scandal faded. She hired a new assistant, took on clients who hadn't heard the rumors or didn't care, rebuilt her reputation one project at a time. She sold the Brookhaven house, too many memories contaminating those walls, and bought a smaller place in Decatur with a yard perfect for a child. She prepared a nursery, attended birthing classes alone, read every book on single parenting. She was happy, in a cautious, carefully constructed way. Her life was smaller than before. Fewer friends, less trust, more walls, but it was hers, completely, utterly hers. Until she ran into Jacob at Whole Foods when she was visibly, unmistakably pregnant. She was reaching for organic apples, one hand on her cart, the other supporting her lower back when she heard his voice. "Natasha!" She froze, turned, and watched Jacob's eyes drop to her belly, widen with shock. "You're pregnant," he said, the words more accusation than observation. "Very observant," Natasha said, trying to move past him toward the checkout. Jacob stepped into her path, not aggressively, but firmly. "Is it mine? None of your business. When did you—" His mind was clearly calculating dates, timelines. "That's mine, that's my baby. You got pregnant before we split, and you never told me." "We were divorced before I even confirmed I was pregnant," Natasha said, which was technically true depending on definitions. "What I do with my body and my reproductive choices is no longer your concern. If that's my biological child, I have legal rights." "You have nothing," Natasha cut him off. "We're divorced. You're not on the birth certificate. You have no claim to this baby unless you want to file a paternity suit, which would require you to publicly admit you got your ex-wife pregnant during the same period you were engaged to another woman and just had a daughter with her. How do you think that plays out for your reputation?" Jacob's jaw clenched. "You can't just keep my child from me." "Watch me," Natasha said. "You've already proven you're a terrible father. You abandoned Zara the moment Brielle cut you off. You haven't fought for custody or visitation because being a parent was just another role you were performing. This baby deserves better than a father who only shows up when it's convenient." "You're being vindictive," Jacob said, "punishing me by keeping my child away." "I'm being protective," Natasha corrected. "There's a difference." She pushed past him toward the checkout, her hands shaking, but her resolve firm. Behind her, she heard Jacob call out, "I'll fight this, Natasha. You can't just erase me from my child's life." But she could, and she would. Over the following weeks, Jacob made several attempts to contact her, texts, emails, showing up at her house. Each time, Natasha documented everything but refused to engage. She consulted with Diane about her legal position. Since the baby was conceived during marriage but will be born after divorce, it's complicated, Diane explained. Jacob could establish paternity and fight for rights, but he'd have to actually file suit, prove biological connection, and argue why he deserves custody after abandoning his other daughter. Most judges wouldn't look favorably on that pattern. What if I just don't list him on the birth certificate? Natasha asked. Legally risky. He could still file paternity later, but practically it makes it harder for him. He'd have to actively pursue it rather than having automatic rights. Natasha gave birth to a healthy boy in winter, during a snowstorm that blanketed Atlanta in rare white. She labored with her doula, refusing to let anyone except medical staff in the delivery room. When the nurse asked about the father's name for the birth certificate, Natasha left it blank. Daniel Peter. Her son, her name, her family. Jacob had no part in any of it. The first months were brutally hard. Sleepless nights, endless feedings, the physical recovery combined with newborn demands. But they were also clarifying. Every moment she spent with Daniel made her more certain she'd made the right choice. This baby didn't need a father who would inevitably disappoint him. He had her, and that was enough, until Jacob showed up at her door when Daniel was several months old. Natasha answered with Daniel on her hip, the baby babbling happily. Jacob stared at the child, at his dark hair, his eyes that were unmistakably Jacob's, and something in his expression cracked. "Please," Jacob said quietly, "just let me meet him. 5 minutes. I'm not asking for custody or rights or anything. Just let me see my son." "Why should I?" Natasha asked. "Give me one good reason why I should let you into his life." "Because he's mine too," Jacob said. "Because despite everything I've done wrong, I'm still his father. Because maybe I don't deserve a second chance, but he deserves to know where he came from." "He came from me," Natasha said. "I'm carrying him, feeding him, raising him. You're just biology." "Then let me be more than biology," Jacob said. "Let me try to be a father." Natasha looked at this man who'd destroyed her trust, stolen from her, tried to frame her for crimes she didn't commit. This man who was also Daniel's biological father, who was standing on her porch begging for a chance she had no obligation to give. "No," she said, "not now. Maybe not ever. You want to prove you can be a father. Go be one to Zara. Show up for her consistently. Pay your support on time. Be present in her life. Do that for years. Not weeks, not months, but years. And then maybe we'll talk." "Years?" Jacob's voice broke. "You're asking me to wait years?" "I'm asking you to earn it," Natasha said. "Something you've never done in your entire life." She closed the door, ignoring his pleas, and focused on Daniel, who was reaching for her face with chubby baby hands, blissfully unaware of the complicated world he'd been born into. That night, rocking Daniel to sleep, Natasha whispered to him, "It's just us, baby boy, you and me, and that's enough." But even as she said it, she wondered if she was being protective or vindictive, if she was making the right choice or the easy one, if denying Jacob access to Daniel was about her son's well-being or her own need for revenge. She pushed the doubts away. She'd made her choice. She'd live with the consequences and hope that someday Daniel would understand. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Over a year after Daniel's birth, Natasha received an unexpected call from Brielle. "I need to tell you something," Brielle said, her voice careful. "About Jacob. He's been different." Natasha's guard went up immediately. "Different how?" "He's been showing up for Zara. Consistently. Every scheduled visit for a long time now, he's been there. He pays support on time, sometimes more than required. He's been in therapy, apparently. And he's—" Brielle paused. "He's actually trying to be a father." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he asked me to," Brielle admitted. "He wanted me to tell you that he's keeping his promise. The one you made him make, to prove himself with Zara before asking about Daniel. He's been doing that, and he wanted you to know." Natasha felt an uncomfortable twist in her chest. "He's manipulating you, using you to get to me." "Maybe," Brielle said. "Or maybe he's genuinely changed. I don't know. I didn't think people could change either, but Natasha, he's different, calmer, more honest. He apologized to me for everything. Not making excuses, just acknowledging what he did. He's been going to co-parenting classes, learning about child development, actually being present. For this long, Natasha said skeptically, that's not enough time to prove real change. I know, Brielle agreed. That's why I'm calling, because I think you should see for yourself. Come to one of his visits with Zara, watch how he is with her, then decide. Against her better judgment, Natasha agreed. The following Saturday, she sat in Brielle's living room while Jacob played with Zara in the backyard. The little girl was growing, a bundle of energy and personality, and Jacob was patient, present. When Zara fell and scraped her knee, he didn't panic or dismiss it. He cleaned the wound, kissed it better, distracted her with a story. When she threw a tantrum about sharing toys, he handled it calmly, setting boundaries without anger. He's been like this every visit? Natasha asked Brielle quietly. For a long time, yes. Before that, he was trying but clearly struggling, but something shifted. He started actually doing the work instead of just performing fatherhood. Natasha watched Jacob swing Zara onto his shoulders, the little girl shrieking with laughter. He looked older, more tired, but also more genuine than she'd ever seen him. He asks about Daniel, Brielle said. Not demanding, just asking. Wants to know how he's doing, if he's healthy, if he's meeting milestones. He sends money for Daniel too, through me. Says you don't have to use it, but he wants to contribute. I don't want his money, Natasha said automatically. I told him that, Brielle replied, but he keeps sending it anyway. Says it's not about you accepting it, it's about him being responsible. After the visit, Jacob approached Natasha carefully, maintaining distance. Thank you for coming. I know you didn't have to. Brielle convinced me, Natasha said. Don't think this changes anything. I don't expect it to, Jacob said. But I wanted you to see that I'm trying, not for you. I know I destroyed any chance of your forgiveness, but for them, for Zara and Daniel. They deserve better than the father I've been. He looked directly at her, and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before. Genuine remorse without the performance. I'm not asking to be in Daniel's life right now, Jacob continued. But when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I want you to know I'll be here, and I'll be someone worth knowing. Natasha left feeling destabilized. She'd built her entire justification for keeping Jacob away on the belief that he was incapable of change. But what if he actually was changing? What if her protection of Daniel was becoming something else? Vindictiveness, control, punishment. Over the following months, she continued checking in with Brielle, verifying Jacob's consistency. He showed up for every visit. He remembered Zara's favorite books, her fears, her joys. He didn't miss birthdays or holidays. He was, by all measurable standards, becoming a decent father. Meanwhile, Daniel was growing into a bright, curious toddler who'd started asking questions. "Where's my daddy?" he asked one day, the inevitable question all children eventually pose. Natasha had prepared her answer. Some families have two parents, some have one. Our family is just you and me, and that's special. But where's my daddy? Daniel persisted with toddler logic. He's not part of our family, Natasha said, hating how inadequate the explanation felt. That night, she called her therapist, Dr. Raymond, for an emergency session. I thought I was protecting him, Natasha said. But what if I'm damaging him? What if denying him a relationship with his father, even a flawed father who's trying, is worse than the risk of disappointment? What do you think? Dr. Raymond asked. I think I'm scared, Natasha admitted. Scared that if I let Jacob in, even partially, I lose control. Scared that Jacob will hurt Daniel the way he hurt me. Scared that my revenge is poisoning my ability to make good choices for my son. Those are legitimate fears, Dr. Raymond said, but they're also rooted in your trauma, not necessarily in Daniel's needs. The question isn't what Jacob deserves, it's what Daniel needs. Natasha spent weeks wrestling with the question. She consulted with Diane, with Trina, with her parents. Everyone had opinions, but no one could make the decision for her. Finally, she called Jacob. I'm willing to consider supervised visits, she said without preamble. Very limited. At my house, on my terms. You show up late even once, you're done. You show any sign of the person you used to be, you're done. Understand? I understand, Jacob said, his voice carefully neutral. Thank you, Natasha. I know you don't owe me this. I don't, she agreed. This isn't for you. It's for Daniel. He deserves the chance to know his father, even if I think his father is fundamentally broken. I am broken, Jacob admitted. But I'm trying to heal, not to earn your forgiveness. I know that's impossible. Just to be someone my kids don't have to be ashamed of. The first visit was scheduled for the following weekend. Natasha prepared Daniel carefully, explaining that a man named Jacob would be visiting, that he was Daniel's biological father, that they'd see how it went. When Jacob arrived, he looked nervous in a way Natasha had never seen. He'd brought age-appropriate toys, clearly researched, not random, and wore clean, casual clothes. He didn't try to hug Daniel or force intimacy, just sat on the floor at the toddler's level and let Daniel approach at his own pace. Hi, Daniel, Jacob said softly. I'm Jacob, it's nice to meet you. Daniel, shy at first, eventually warmed up enough to show Jacob his favorite trucks. They played together for a while Natasha watched from the kitchen, her emotions a complicated tangle. This was what she'd denied Daniel, this gentle interaction, this chance to know his father. Had she been wrong? Had her protection been excessive? Or was this just the beginning, the honeymoon period before Jacob inevitably disappointed? After Jacob left, Daniel asked, "Is Jacob my daddy?" Natasha crouched down to his level. "Yes, baby. Jacob is your biological father. He's going to visit sometimes." "Okay," Daniel said with toddler acceptance, already moving on to the next thing. But for Natasha, it wasn't okay. It was complicated, messy, full of doubt. She'd opened a door she could never fully close again, and she had no idea if she'd saved her son or exposed him to inevitable pain. Chapter 9. The Grey Area. Months of supervised visits revealed something Natasha hadn't expected. Jacob was actually good with Daniel. Not perfect. He made mistakes, struggled with toddler logic, sometimes looked overwhelmed, but he showed up. Every single time he showed up. He learned Daniel's routines, his favorite songs, his fear of the vacuum cleaner. He brought books they'd read together. He didn't try to buy Daniel's affection with expensive toys, just offered his presence and attention. But the more consistent Jacob became, the more uncomfortable Natasha felt. Her friends noticed. "You seem tense," Mira said over coffee. "I thought letting Jacob have visits was supposed to relieve some of your burden, not make it worse." "It's not worse," Natasha said. "It's just complicated. I've spent years building a narrative where I'm the hero and he's the villain, but he's not behaving like a villain anymore. He's behaving like a struggling human being who's trying to be better." "Does that mean you have to let him back into your life?" Mira asked. "He's not back in my life," Natasha corrected. "He's in Daniel's life. There's a difference." But was there? Every visit meant seeing Jacob, coordinating schedules, making small talk about Daniel's development. It meant softening the hard boundaries she'd built, allowing proximity to someone who'd destroyed her. It meant acknowledging that maybe, possibly, people could change. One evening after Jacob left, Natasha found herself crying in the shower, deep, racking sobs that surprised her with their intensity. She'd won. She'd survived the betrayal, the divorce, the attempts to frame her. She'd built a life for herself and Daniel. She'd protected what mattered. So why did she feel so hollow? "Because winning wasn't supposed to look like this," she told Dr. Raymond during their next session. "Winning was supposed to mean Jacob suffering while I flourished. But he's not suffering anymore. He's rebuilding his life, being a decent father, moving forward, and I'm stuck in this grey area where I can't fully hate him anymore, but I'll never trust him again." "Maybe that's what real life looks like," Dr. Raymond suggested. "Not heroes and villains, but flawed people doing their best with limited tools." "I don't want him to be redeemed," Natasha admitted. "I want him to stay the monster so I can feel justified in everything I did. But if he's not a monster, if he's just broken and trying to heal, then what does that make me?" The question haunted her. Months into Jacob's supervised visits, something shifted. Daniel, now older, started asking for Daddy Jacob, started talking about him between visits, started showing affection Natasha hadn't expected or necessarily wanted. "Can Daddy Jacob come to my birthday party?" Daniel asked. Natasha wanted to say no. The party would have her parents, her friends, her new community. Letting Jacob into that space felt like contamination. But she looked at Daniel's hopeful face and heard herself say, "We'll see." She ended up inviting Jacob to a separate, smaller celebration, just the three of them at a park, where Jacob could give Daniel his gift without infiltrating Natasha's broader life. Watching Jacob push Daniel on the swings, both of them laughing, Natasha felt something painful in her chest. Not love, that was long dead, but a recognition that she'd become so focused on protecting Daniel from potential hurt that she might be causing a different kind of hurt through denial. "He's good with him," Keisha said. She'd maintained occasional contact with Natasha, their shared experience with Jacob creating an unlikely bond. "With Zara too. I never thought he had it in him." "Neither did I," Natasha admitted. "I'm still not sure it's real. I keep waiting for him to reveal this is just another long con." "What if it's not?" Keisha asked. "What if he genuinely changed? What then?" "Then I've been punishing him for who he was, instead of acknowledging who he's becoming," Natasha said. "And I don't know if I can live with that." But she also didn't know if she could let go of her anger. The rage had sustained her through the divorce, through the rebuilding, through the loneliness. Without it, what was left? One evening, during a particularly good visit where Jacob, Daniel, and Natasha had accidentally ended up having dinner together, Jacob said something that stopped her cold. "Thank you," he said as he was leaving, "for giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it." "You don't," Natasha agreed. "But Daniel does. That's the only reason you're here." "I know," Jacob said, "but still, thank you. You could have kept me away forever, and I wouldn't have blamed you. What I did to you, the theft, the lies, trying to frame you, it was unforgivable. I understand that. But you're letting me try to be a father anyway, and that's more grace than I deserve." After he left, Natasha poured herself a rare glass of wine and sat on her porch, thinking about Grace. She'd spent years wanting Jacob to suffer, wanting cosmic justice, karmic retribution, some acknowledgement from the universe that what he'd done was wrong and deserved punishment. Instead, he'd rebuilt his life, found stability, if not happiness, became a present father to his children, learned from his mistakes. And she'd survived, rebuilt, created a life for herself and Daniel. They'd both moved forward. Neither of them was the person they'd been years ago. So why did it feel like she was the only one still trapped in the past? Her phone buzzed. A text from her boyfriend Ryan, a divorced father she'd been seeing. "Still on for dinner tomorrow?" Natasha stared at the message. Ryan was kind, steady, honest. He knew her whole story and didn't judge. He had his own baggage, his own failed marriage. They understood each other. She should feel grateful, happy, content with what she'd built from the ashes of her destroyed marriage. Instead, she felt tired of being strong, tired of being vigilant, tired of carrying the weight of justified anger that had nowhere to go anymore. "Yes," she texted back, "looking forward to it." And she was, sort of, in the way you look forward to things that are good for you even when they don't excite you. This was her victory, a stable life, a healthy son, a decent relationship, safety and security. It should have been enough. So why did it feel like she'd lost something essential in the winning? Chapter 10. The aftermath. Years after the divorce, Natasha stood in her kitchen watching Daniel and Zara play together in the backyard. The half-siblings had formed a bond during supervised visits, innocent of the complicated history that connected them. Daniel was older now, and Zara was older too, a bright, energetic child who adored her little brother. Jacob sat at the patio table monitoring them but giving them space. Brielle was inside helping Natasha prepare lunch. Somehow, impossibly, they'd all ended up here, Not a blended family exactly, but something functional. A collection of people damaged by the same man, finding ways to coexist for their children's sake. "This is surreal," Brielle said, chopping vegetables. "Years ago, I hated you without knowing you. You were the crazy ex-wife Jacob warned me about. Now we're making salad together. Years ago, I wanted to destroy everyone connected to Jacob," Natasha admitted, "including you, even though you were as much a victim as I was. Now we're friends? Is that what we are? Trauma-bonded co-parents?" Brielle suggested. "It's a whole new category of relationship." Through the window, they watched Jacob help Daniel climb the play structure. He was gentle, patient, fully present. Nothing like the man who'd stolen, lied, and nearly destroyed Natasha's life. "Do you think he's actually changed?" Natasha asked. "Or is this just a really long performance?" "Honestly," Brielle said, "I think he's changed. But I also think change doesn't erase damage. He's better than he was, but that doesn't fix what he broke." That night, after everyone left, Natasha sat with Daniel during his bedtime routine. "I love Daddy Jacob," Daniel announced while she read him a story. "I'm glad," Natasha said, and meant it. Sort of. "Do you love Daddy Jacob?" "That's complicated, baby. Adults have complicated feelings sometimes." "But he's nice now," Daniel said with child logic, "so you should love him." If only it were that simple. After Daniel fell asleep, Natasha pulled out her journal, a habit Dr. Raymond had suggested years ago. She wrote, "I've been so focused on making Jacob pay for what he did that I didn't prepare for what happens if he actually becomes someone decent. My revenge narrative doesn't have space for his redemption. But watching him with Daniel, seeing him genuinely try, I can't deny he's different. Does that mean I have to let go of my anger? Am I allowed to acknowledge he's changed while still being furious about what he destroyed? Can both truths exist simultaneously?" The next morning brought unexpected news. Jacob's firm had offered him a significant professional opportunity. He called to tell Natasha because, as he explained, it would mean better child support, more stable income for Daniel. "I'm not telling you because I need your approval," Jacob said carefully, "but because any major life changes affect Daniel, and I wanted you to know directly from me." "Thank you for telling me," Natasha said, the courtesy feeling strange. They talked for a few more minutes about logistics, adjusted visitation schedule around his new work demands, increased support payments, vacation planning. It was civil, professional. Two adults coordinating about their shared child, nothing like the warfare of years ago. After hanging up, Natasha felt an unexpected wave of grief. Not for Jacob, not for their marriage, but for the certainty she used to have. The clear division between victim and villain, good and evil, justified and wrong. Life in the grey area was exhausting. That evening, Ryan came over for dinner. He'd met Daniel multiple times now, always respectful of Natasha's boundaries about introducing partners to her son. He was good with Daniel, patient and kind without trying to replace Jacob. "You seem distracted," Ryan said after they'd put Daniel to bed. "Jacob got a promotion," Natasha said, "and I realized I'm happy for him. Not ecstatic, not celebrating, but genuinely glad his life is improving, which feels like betrayal to the woman I was years ago, the one who wanted him to suffer." "Maybe that woman served her purpose," Ryan suggested. "She protected you when you needed protecting, fought when you needed to fight. But Daniel doesn't need that warrior anymore. He needs a mum who can co-parent peacefully with his dad." "I'm not sure I know how to be that person," Natasha admitted. "You're already doing it," Ryan said. "You let Jacob have supervised visits, you coordinate schedules, you speak civilly to him. That's not weakness, that's growth." Later, lying in bed alone, Ryan had gone home. They weren't at the sleepover stage yet. Natasha thought about growth, about how the woman she'd become through surviving Jacob's betrayal wasn't the woman she'd wanted to be. She was harder, more suspicious, slower to trust. But she was also stronger, more self-sufficient. clearer about her boundaries. She'd lost naivete but gained wisdom, lost innocence but gained resilience, lost the marriage she thought she had but found herself in the wreckage. Weeks later, Jacob asked if he could start taking Daniel for overnight visits. "I've been consistent for a long time now. I think he's ready, and I'd like to have him stay with me sometimes. Let you have actual time off." Every instinct screamed at Natasha to refuse. Overnight meant losing control, trusting Jacob completely, risking Daniel's safety in ways that terrified her. But Daniel was older now. Other divorced parents did overnight custody swaps. It was normal, healthy even. "We start with one night," Natasha said finally. "You send me photos before bed, text me when he wakes up, call if anything seems wrong. And Jacob, if you mess this up, if you miss a pickup or show up unprepared or do anything that makes me doubt your reliability, we go back to supervised visits only." "Understood," Jacob said. "Thank you, Natasha. I know this is hard for you." "You have no idea," she replied. The first overnight visit was torture. Natasha paced her house, checked her phone compulsively, barely slept. But Daniel came home the next morning happy, excited about the pancakes Daddy Jacob made, and unharmed. Gradually, the overnights became routine. Daniel split time between households. Jacob proved himself consistently reliable, on time, prepared, attentive. And Natasha had to accept a reality she'd never wanted. She was successfully co-parenting with her ex-husband. The man who'd stolen from her, lied to her, tried to destroy her, was now a regular presence in her life. Not romantic, not forgiven, but present. On Daniel's birthday, Natasha threw a party that included her parents, her friends, Ryan, Brielle and Zara, Keisha, and yes, Jacob. Watching everyone interact, people from different parts of Daniel's complicated family tree, Natasha felt something settle inside her. This wasn't the victory she'd imagined. She hadn't destroyed Jacob completely. He hadn't suffered endlessly. He'd rebuilt, recovered, become someone better than he was. And she'd rebuilt too, created a life that was smaller but more authentic, found love again, carefully and cautiously, learned to coexist with someone who'd hurt her profoundly. That night, after the party ended and Daniel was asleep, Natasha sat on her porch with the journal Dr. Raymond had given her years ago. She wrote, "I wanted justice. Instead, I got complexity. I wanted Jacob to pay forever. Instead, he's paying his child support on time and showing up for birthdays. I wanted to be the hero of my own story. Instead, I'm just a person who survived something awful and did her best with what remained. Maybe that's enough. Maybe the real victory isn't in destroying your enemies. It's in building a life so full that their presence or absence stops mattering. Jacob isn't the villain of my story anymore. He's just the father of my child, and I'm not the victim. I'm just a woman who learned that surviving sometimes means letting go of the anger that kept you alive in the darkest times. I don't know if I've forgiven him. I don't think I ever will, not really. But I've stopped letting him occupy space in my head rent-free. I've stopped measuring my happiness by his suffering. That's not forgiveness. It's something harder. It's moving forward anyway." She closed the journal and looked up at the stars. Tomorrow, Daniel would wake up calling for her. The day would unfold with its routines and small joys. Jacob would send his weekly text checking on Daniel. Ryan would call about dinner plans. Life would continue, messy and imperfect, and nothing like she'd planned. But it was hers, completely, authentically hers. And that, finally, was enough.